Ladies and gentlemen, the Rory Peck Awards are about to begin. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats in the auditorium.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chair of the Rory Peck Trust, Tira Schubart.
Good evening to everybody, and welcome back to the BFI to celebrate the Rory Peck Trust Awards. It's a special pleasure to be here with so many wonderful colleagues, including those of you watching online around the world. After the past challenging 18 months to be here with you and to mark and commend the remarkable talent of the freelancers working in news and current affairs around the world, it's a real privilege. It's great to see you all in person. Thank you so much for coming. This is our 26th year of celebrating the work of freelancers who shed light on some of the most dangerous and sometimes hidden and always fundamental news stories of our time. And this year would have also been the 60th birthday of Juliet Peck, who founded the Trust after Rory was killed. Now Juliet and Rory were brought together by their shared passion for the people of Afghanistan. Rory covered the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Juliet ran Afghan aid in Peshawar. They stayed on until the Soviet troops turned tail and withdrew. And then was a time of hope for Afghanistan. And there was a hope then for peace and dignity that recent events have shattered. Juliet and Rory would have been heartbroken, and they would have most certainly returned to work with their Afghan colleagues, those remarkably brave journalists. Some of us here were lucky enough to have known Juliet and will agree with one of her friends who said, Juliet found joy wherever she could, and she spread joy wherever she went. Our first patron, Lord Salisbury, who very kindly is joining us here tonight, knew Juliet for many years. And so let's hear what he had to say about her.
Well, we set up Afghan Aid in a rather scruffy office in the Charing Cross Road. It must have been in the very early 80s. And one of the first people who came to help was Juliet. She didn't have much experience of Islamic countries. She didn't speak the languages. She didn't know much about aid or anything else much, really, except that she was full of energy. She had very strong views. She was clearly intelligent and persuasive. In fact, she was so persuasive that it didn't take me and others very long to realize that unless we sent her, she'd go on her own, and she might be even more at risk that way. So with some reluctance, we sent her off to Peshawar, where, as you know, she established herself within a very short time and became, as a force of nature, somebody who established all sorts of relationships with NGOs, but particularly with Afghans. She certainly didn't temper her extremely strong views, either about policy or people. So it was very clear that her friendships were born certainly out of affection and respect, even if you disagreed with her, which a lot of people very often did. So I suppose looking back on it with the benefit of hindsight, it isn't surprising that she would want to do something for the people who were following in the footsteps of those that had been killed. I don't know what it was about her charm, but it was a very good example, I think, of the sort of memories she evokes. And of course, I don't know about you, but somebody with enormous courage like her, I always admire. And she had moral and physical courage.
And a grown-up version of that little girl is here tonight, too. You can spot her later. So tonight, as we celebrate fellow freelancers from around the world, let's also remember Juliet and toast her and to Rory and the work of the Trust, which is their legacy. It now gives me a huge pleasure to hand over to the host for our host for the evening. So please give a warm Rory Peck Trust welcome to ITV's Europe editor, James Mates, and BBC special correspondent, Nawal El-Maglafi.
Thank you so much, Tira. Once again, a very warm welcome to the 2021 Rory Peck Awards. Thank you all for joining us here at London's South Bank, and for those of you who are watching from all over the world on our live stream. If you want to share what's happening here at tonight's awards, please do so using the hashtag Rory Peck Awards. Now, I know most of you here are on call, ready to cover a breaking news story, but please can you all put your phones on silent so that we can really appreciate the work of the finalists that we're about to see.
Tonight we're here celebrating the work of freelancers in news and current affairs, including the independent journalists, filmmakers and producers who work behind the camera, often in very challenging circumstances, and without the organisational support, backup or resources that so many of us take for granted. Most of us here work beside freelancers. We know how much their work contributes to international news gathering, covering the events that we cannot access, uncovering the stories that we cannot reach. These awards are special in that they recognise the outstanding contribution that freelancers make to independent journalism around the world and honour those who, despite increasing threats and dangers, work tirelessly and bravely to bring us quality coverage of world events and underreported stories. The awards recognise the quality of the work, but also take into account journalistic integrity, and within that, duty of care and individual endeavour. The judges also considered the circumstances under which every entry was produced.
If you're familiar with the Rory Peck Awards, you'll know that these awards are unique, not only in celebrating the achievements of the winners, but also of all the finalists. Each one of them receives recognition, and all of the finalists who are in the audience tonight will be invited on stage to say a few words. However, as I'm sure most of you are aware, COVID restrictions have made it even more difficult than usual to travel here. And sadly, some of our finalists haven't been able to make it tonight. But we do hope they'll be following our live stream and will be able to see us celebrating their extraordinary work. Before we find out who the winners are, let's have a taste of these amazing entries.
The only thing that helped me was to avoid thinking about anything and everything. Just take it a day at a time. Because if you stop to think, it's...
To ever see my brother on the news as one of these black men getting murdered by them.
Up the bed first before I can sit you up. Because this is dangerous.
I've been in this hospital for 5 years. I've never imagined something like this.
Can you just put the pillows behind him just a little bit better? He wants to get out.
This is 10-year-old Maria Antuman. Both of her parents were killed in the attack she witnessed. She managed to escape into the forest. As she fled, her foot got caught in a hunting snare. She lay trapped and terrified for hours. What started as a local insurgency of disenfranchised young people has evolved into what the US government now says is the Islamic State.
Incredible entries tonight. This year, the judges have commented on how high the standard of entries has been, which has made choosing tonight's finalists and winners even harder, especially as the entries come from such an immensely wide range of places in the world. So before we get into the awards properly, let's just hear some of the judges talking about the caliber of this year's entries.
Hello everyone, I'm David Dieudonné and I'm the lead for France, Italy and Spain at the Google News Lab. I'm here to represent the Google News Initiative. Part of our role is to elevate high-quality journalism and to support journalists around the world. We are honoured to support this year's Rory Peck News Award.
I really enjoyed watching the entries this year. A fantastic array of brilliant films. At the heart of all of them were just really good characters that you could get into and watch and feel that you could really relate to. Beautifully edited, beautifully filmed, a real pleasure to watch.
I thought the films this year, the ones I was lucky enough to see, were superb. And we had a really hard time in our category deciding on the finalists, because there were some really wonderful films there. And also in the spirit of the Rory Peck Awards, some extraordinary freelance work.
I think right the way across the range of entries, there's a strong sense of the bravery and the courage of camera people out there getting important and historic pictures for us. But what stood out about these 3 entries wasn't just the bravery and going and filming what they did. It was bringing a sense of the humanity of the moment, showing us things that hadn't been shown or hadn't been seen, or giving us a fantastic sense of the conflict in its full depth and its full complexity, and also the context in which it was taking place. And all of those showed some of that.
As I watched the entries in the News Features Award category, one after the other, they kept raising the bar higher and higher in storytelling and creativity, in the topics and angles chosen. It filled my journalist's heart with joy and made me feel so proud of us as a community.
It was thrilling to judge the entries this year. The quality was the highest I've ever seen, and the breadth of subject matter truly was inspiring. I just loved it, and I was really humbled and filled with admiration for the freelancers who so proactively and under their own steam conceived of exciting projects and then found the wherewithal to realize them. It was just such a pleasure.
Now, on to our first award tonight, which is the Rory Peck News Award, sponsored by the Google News Initiative. Before we find out who's won the prize, let's have a look at their work. Our first finalist in this category is Ethiopian freelancer Solan Koli for The Cost of War, coverage of Ethiopia's Tigray conflict. The judges felt that this was a very underreported conflict and that Solan had addressed the political realities on the ground, resulting in a powerful and sober approach, impressive in its reach, with understated interviews that put this very hard-to-reach conflict in the spotlight. Let's see a clip of this entry and more of the judges' comments.
ምንሻና ፖሊስ አባጎናቸው አለ ወያለው ሲቪሉ ደግሞ አለ ሲቪሉ እነሱ መሳሪያ ስለያዝላቸው መንገድማቸው ከሆነ በመሳሪያ ይመቱናል እንደ ሲቪሎች ደግሞ ገጀራና ፈራድ ካራ ያዝ በዚያ ነው የሚመቱንኛ
ኩናት ከፍት ዝነበሮ ዝባእሰ እዩ ገዲዱ ዘሎ ንምንታይ ገዲዱ ናብ ሲቪላት ዘዘንበለ ውግእ ተገይሩ ዘሎ ሕዚ
ምንድናችሁ ውጡ አሉን እኛ ገበሬ ነን እኛም ያቻ አሮጌ ነን በሽተኞች ነን መውጫ አጥተን ተባራሪ እንዳያገኛችሁ አሉና እዚህ ቁጫን ስንል ውጡ አሉን ወጣነ ቁጫነ ሴቶቹ ወደ ኋላ አርገው ወንዶቹ በፊታችን በቃ ግብ ግብ አርገዋቸው ሄዱ ምን እንበል እዚያ አሪውን ወድ ብንደል አንዱ ብንደል ማን ይደርስልን እዚያው ተዘግተን ሬሳ ጋራ ወለን አድረን እዚያው በሁለት ቀናችን ወጣ
An extremely strong piece shot in a very sober and humble way with multiple sources in a very difficult place to reach.
I think what was impactful about this entry was the number of months the work spanned. It really gave an insight into what was happening on the ground, a conflict that was really hard to reach. There was very little understanding of what was going on there. And the fact that the filmmaker went back repeatedly meant that the body of work was really comprehensive.
I think the thing about The Cost of War as an entry wasn't just that it was an incredibly brave piece of reportage and camera work, but also that it brought an incredible context to a really complex and underreported story. The camera work was really strong, the production was good, but he also had a strong humanity in terms of the way he approached each of the individuals that he interviewed. And overall, it was a very powerful piece of work.
Our next news finalist is a journalist and filmmaker from Myanmar who can't be identified for safety reasons. The judges noted that this film shows us historically important pictures of the early days of the coup in Myanmar, which took a lot of courage to acquire. There was a strong sense of the humanity in the footage and great texture in the entry. So let's have a look.
So yeah, what stood out to me with this entry was the fact that the filmmaker was on the street with the protesters. It was very up close, personal. You really felt that you were there living what they were going through. And the filmmaker also, went home with them, and you got a really intimate view of what the activists and what was happening on the streets.
I think first and foremost you have to recognise the extreme personal risk that this cameraman took to record what was historic moments, the opening salvos in a military coup and the early stages of protests. But at the same time, he brought a fantastic humanity to what he was filming, whether it was an old woman crying at a funeral or a man having a defiant slogan tattooed on his arm. You really got a sense of the cost to the people of Myanmar in standing up and protesting.
There we would like to recognise the personal risk in shooting this piece. It was original, newsworthy, and extremely valuable.
Finally in this category is American and Canadian duo Katie G. Nelson and Ed O. Their entry, In the Middle of Chaos, living with the Dante Wright protesters at the front door, takes us back to April of this year, into the home of a family living directly opposite the Brooklyn Center in Minnesota. The immersive nature of this film made this piece very special, a beautiful piece of reportage. Let's have a look.
It's okay. You okay? Y'all fine. He just want me. Go over there. Stay on the floor. Stay with sister.
At first it was very traumatizing to hear all the booms and the bangs. You don't know if that's gunshots or people are outside getting injured.
Okay, be careful.
It's chaotic, but you are sitting in the middle of the chaos and you're just numb.
My brother, he's only 2 right now. I don't want to ever see my brother on the news as one of these black men getting murdered by them.
The police are pretty much calm. During the day, the crowd is calm as well. But when it turns like, I want to say maybe 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, it gets a little aggressive. All of the army tanks, and I don't know what they're shooting in the air, but just to see their presence is like, if you could put all the money and time into what you're doing right now, you can put the money and time into fixing the problem.
Well, I absolutely love this entry. I thought it was compelling and at the same time intimate, and also it just brought a completely different perspective to the sort of normal images you were seeing in what was a big breaking international story. So whether it was the relationship between the mother and the daughter and their different views of what was happening outside, or just the absolutely stunning filmic camera work where you would have family cowering in the bedroom with images of the National Guard just in the background through the window, all in one picture. It was a really stunning piece of journalism and a stunning piece of camera work.
We see a fresh angle as well as very powerful visual storytelling of how the anti-police protests in the heart of the American Midwest have affected the lives of many beyond those taking part in the protests.
I got the impression from the film that they'd given the style of the filmmaking a lot of thought. It was very considered, and as a result the piece felt kind of complete and had a very strong look and feel.
Well, outstanding reporting from all three finalists. Now, to tell us who's won the Rory Peck News Award, sponsored by Google News Initiative, please welcome the head of Google News Lab, Matt Cook.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. It is great to be here in person and great to be back. On behalf of the Google News Initiative, a big thank you to the Rory Peck Trust for your important and tireless work, and especially to the team responsible for tonight's event. Congratulations, it is a privilege to be here. We are supporting the News Award, which is, as you've seen, for video coverage of a news event where the focus is on the immediacy of the story. Congratulations to all three finalists. And the 2021 Rory Peck News Award goes to Solan Colley for The Cost of War, coverage of Ethiopia's Tigray conflict.
Well, sadly, Solan can't be with us here in London tonight, despite best efforts, but we can hear from him directly from Ethiopia. So let's see if our satellite link...
Thank you. Thank you. This is a fantastic news. First, I would like to thank God for His grace and strength. I feel so proud to have received such a prestigious award. I didn't expect it because both of the finalists have also done fantastic stories. This award means a lot to me because it is a testament that my efforts have succeeded in shining a light in the middle of information blackouts and making the voice of Ethiopian war victims heard across borders, knocking on many doors and touching many hearts. Thank you everyone at the Rory Peck Trust for recognizing my work with this award. I would like to dedicate this award for all the victims of war around the world, in particular those brave children, women and men in northern Ethiopia whose pain and suffering are featured in my news stories. I'm forever indebted to my family and friends for believing in me, to my brothers and sisters for their unstinting support. I would like to thank AFP for the opportunity and for making this award possible. I would like to mention my AFP colleagues in Addis Ababa, Robbie Corey-Boulay and Eduardo Soteras, for the support and for being such a great fun to work with. I'm thankful for the leadership and direction of Salim Clary and Francois Ozil from Nairobi Bureau, and also Jilali Beled and Johannes Myberg from London. Thank you all. Thank you.
Congratulations, Solan. Congratulations. Now, you know the drill. Every one of the finalists deserves recognition. And as a part of a long-standing tradition here at the Rory Peck Awards, we normally invite the other finalists up on the stage to say a few words as well. But unfortunately, the journalists still in Myanmar couldn't make it here tonight, but they have sent us a few words to read out on their behalf to let us know the truth about the state of journalism there. And this is what they've said. The military council is afraid, so they're sentencing journalists who reveal the truth to long jail terms. They're threatening journalists by arresting and keeping them in prison so they can't cover news freely. They're working to disappear journalists inside Myanmar. Before, journalists writing the news used to get by on small salaries. They couldn't provide much for their families, but they kept doing it because it's their passion. Now most journalists are scared because of the arrests and sentences the military council has handed out. They're finding it difficult to live. Some have become vendors instead. Some didn't even know they'd been charged with incitement against the military until they arrived home and were arrested there. Some dare not to stay together with their families and are hiding in the jungle. Their families have been threatened and arrested as well. However, journalists are still working and doing a journalist's job.
Well, that's a powerful statement, and we hope you've been able to watch this ceremony online, and we want you to know that we stand with you in solidarity. Now, please welcome to the stage Kathy G. Nelson. Unfortunately, Ed O is unable to be with us this evening, but Kathy.
Hi, my name is Katie G. Nelson, and on behalf of Ed O and the New York Times team, I am really thrilled to be here. The death of Dante Wright, George Floyd, Philando Castile, and Jamar Clark by law enforcement in the Twin Cities has caused unspeakable pain and trauma to Ebony McMillan, her family in Brooklyn Center, as well as many, many other families of color across the Midwest. As a journalist who has reported on each one of those deaths and those names and those faces and those stories, and I have sat with countless grieving families across the world, I will be the first to say it is my privilege and my honor to be here and to do my job and to sit with people on the worst day of their lives, because I had somebody on the worst day of mine, and that is something that we all deserve. I want to thank each and every single person who has supported my work, Ed's work, and all the freelance journalists who are struggling to get their stories from the field to the front page every day. As somebody that almost quit journalism about a year and a half ago because it was so hard, I want to thank those people. Being a freelance journalist is hands down the most difficult, frustrating, backbreaking, and bank account emptying job there is out there. And without a doubt, it is the absolute best job in the world. And I thank you all for being here and supporting us. Thank you.
Congratulations to all the News Award finalists, and a big thank you to Matt Cook from Google News Lab. Now, on to the Rory Peck News Features Award. This award recognises longer reports and films which look beyond the immediacy of a news story. Our first News Features finalist is from Nepal, the work of Rajita Adhikari and Shreya Banerjee, whose film Windows of Everest for Al Jazeera 101 East amazed the judges. The story uproots assumptions and does it in a truly memorable and beautiful manner, befitting the dramatic Himalayan scenery. Let's have a look.
In this Sherpa village of Photse, glory and tragedy go hand in hand. Every house here has someone who has made it to the top of Everest, not just once, but several times. But many people here have also lost their loved ones on the mountain peaks. When Jungmo's husband died, the family lost its breadwinner. Jungmo was left to fend for herself and her two sons. Funaru is an experienced high-altitude climbing guide who trains aspiring mountaineers. At this school, you're also focusing on training women, especially widows. Why is that?
कल्चर हाम्रो सोसाइटीमा चाहिँ के छ भने हस्बेन्डले कमाउने अब बुढाले चाहिँ कमाउने बुढीहरू घरमा बस्ने अब बुढीहरूले चाहिँ घरको टेक केयर गर्ने जस्तो हुन्छ अनि त्यसैले नै अब विडो भएपछि त अलिकति गाह्रो नै भइहाल्छ नि किनभने अब इन्कम नै गाह्रो हुन्छ अब लाइफस्टाइलै गाह्रो हुन्छ बच्चा पाल्नै गाह्रो हुन्छ
Everest has come to embody more than just grief and loss. Now, it's also a symbol of hope and the possibility of forging a new future high in the Himalayas.
This was a beautiful movie, just a joy to watch on every level. The backdrop, well, you know, enough said. But the characters were studies in strength and determination, and they just shone, they just leapt from the screen.
Widows of Everest is such a beautiful piece showcasing female empowerment. It made me have deep thoughts about the hidden side of every success story we tell and we celebrate. People get rewarded for personal achievements, but at what cost? In Nepal, lives are silently sacrificed. I will never think of Everest climbers the same way again.
They really are extraordinary women, and I felt utterly compelled to watch this film. And of course, it's all set against this amazingly beautiful background of the Himalayas and Mount Everest.
Next is finalist Brent E. Huffman with his fascinating insight into the plight of the Uyghurs who fled China but now face repression in Pakistan. The judges said that this was a brilliantly structured film, solid journalism with a beating heart. Let's see a clip.
In a secret location in Pakistan, Mohammed Umair is running an underground railroad, smuggling Uyghur Muslims out of China.
मैं तकरीबन 10 साल से ये काम कर रहा हूँ मैंने बहुत सारी फैमिली भिजवाए हैं बहुत सारी फैमिली के मसाइल किए हैं जो वहाँ से हमारे उइगर जो वतन से आते हैं तो इंशाल्लाह हम आगे भी नेक्स्ट में यही करते रहेंगे हमारा फ़र्ज़ है हम नहीं करेंगे तो कौन करेगा वो हमसे खौफज़दा होके तो ही हमारे ऊपर इन्होंने ये किया हुआ है हिटलर से भी ज़्यादा ख़तरनाक हमारे लिए कर रहा है नस्ल पूछिए तो ये हमारे अंदर छोटे छोटे बच्चे 2-2 साल के बच्चे माजरा कर दिए इसने मार रहे हैं उनको जैसे इतने जुल्म हो रहा है कि दरअसल चाइना इस वक्त पूरी दुनिया के अंदर पावर बनना चाह रहा है तो इसलिए ने कहा कि इनको ही ख़त्म कर दो तो हमारे लिए अंदर कोई परेशानी ना हो क्योंकि इनको मार दिया जाए सबको या इनको इस तरह वो कर दें कि ये किसी की जगह रही नहीं जो कि आज जो हमारे साथ जो हो रहा है
What's really exciting about this film is at the heart of it is a compelling and brilliant character, a Uyghur teacher who's escaped from China, set up in northern Pakistan, and is now teaching other Uyghurs, their children, about their culture.
Uyghurs who fled China now face repression in Pakistan was so ambitious in scope, the fact that the journalist spent years news gathering, and it captured both the intimate human toll of China's persecution of the Uyghur minority, along with placing it in a geopolitical context. We were really, really so impressed with this fantastic story.
Uyghurs who fled China now face repression in Pakistan is an incredible piece of hardcore, high-quality journalism that ticks so many boxes for me. It tells a human story at the micro level in such a touching way, only to help us understand the macro geopolitics in such depth that I felt I had read a couple of thick books watching that documentary.
This was an ambitious film. It was not only a beautiful character study, it was also a geopolitical essay. Both realized brilliantly, quite a difficult topic, addressed conceptually, and then brought to life by a wonderful, illuminating, inspiring character.
Our third finalist in this category is by journalists Tuja Kareng, Hun Lee and Edward Wynne. Their film takes us far from the urban street protests of Myanmar to the lesser-known rural border areas. and gives viewers incredible access to the largely unknown story of secret military training camps and the uneasy alliance between the rebel fighters and student protesters. Let's see a clip and hear more of what the judges had to say about Myanmar, an uneasy alliance.
At a secret location near Myanmar's Chinese border, we've gained access to a training camp run by ethnic insurgents. But the trainees are not hardened guerrilla fighters. They're ordinary young men and women. In 3 months, the army has reportedly killed over 800 unarmed protesters, including at least 50 children, and arrested thousands more. Their resistance has come at a cost. According to independent human rights organisations, since the coup, dozens of civilians have been killed and injured in airstrikes across Karen and Kachin states.
Myanmar, an uneasy alliance, is such a revelation. It had exclusive access in a country that is not at all accessible to journalists. It helps us understand and even foresee the future under this uneasy alliance between minorities and democracy seekers from the majority. It makes sense after all. No democracy can be had without the inclusion of all components of the population.
An amazing report that took us from the urban conflict to the countryside and the border areas and gave us special access to these secret military camps. Editorially, it was interesting because it looked at the past and the present, but also considered the future.
So this was a film that took me somewhere that I hadn't been, to the Kachin in the north of the country and to their training camps. I hadn't seen that on film before, and it was really compelling and extraordinary pictures. What it then did was it placed activists out of their internet cafes and their homes and flats. I loved the fact that the whole thing was structured around this training camp, showing these activists having to get fit and having to understand about how to fight a proper war.
I loved seeing the resolve of the young protesters deciding that because they'd been beaten back by the army, they weren't going to lie down, that they wanted to try somehow to arm themselves spiritually and perhaps physically for the fight ahead. It showed very clearly this is not over.
Well, now to announce the winner, please welcome patron of the Rory Peck Trust, Lord Black of Brentwood.
Thank you very much. It's an enormous privilege to be patron of the Rory Peck Trust and to have the opportunity to present this prestigious award tonight. The Trust does exceptional, life-changing work, and it does so in a very tough environment. It's a small organisation with limited resources, but its influence and its importance are out of all proportion to its size, especially at a time when, tragically, the dangers for journalists worldwide are growing. What it does is absolutely vital, not just for individual freelancers and their families, but for media freedom. For without a safe environment for journalists and reporters, and help for them when they are in difficulty, there can never be a truly free and independent media. That the Trust achieves so much is thanks to its dedicated supporters, many of whom are here tonight. And I would like to offer my deep personal thanks to all of you for everything you do to ensure that the Trust can continue its crucial work. The support you give makes such a huge difference. Thank you. And now to the award. Congratulations to all the finalists, but the winner of the 2021 News Features Award is Brent E. Huffman for Uyghurs who fled China now face repression in Pakistan.
Boy, thank you so much. I just flew in this morning, so I'm still on Chicago time a little bit, so I apologize. But thank you so much to the Rory Peck Trust. This is an enormous honor. I'm so touched. I'm hoping this win could bring more attention to the Uyghur issue, both inside China and outside of China in countries like Pakistan. I would say the genocide of the Uyghur people is the most pressing human rights issue of our time, and I dedicate this to Umair, the activist at the center of the film. I hope people are inspired by his story and feel moved to get involved and to help. Thank you so much to my team at Vice News Tonight, Sean Stevens and Madeline May, who were incredibly supportive. Thank you to the Pulitzer Center and the Buffett Institute, who fund this project. And thank you to Xiaoli Zhou, my wife, who's home with my young children, and who I couldn't do this kind of work without her incredible support. Thank you all so much.
What a truly unique story. Well done, Brent. Now, let us welcome to the stage the other finalists in this category. Saraya Banerjee, who came over all the way from India to be with us this evening, as well as producer Tom Sheehan and executive producer Fiona Lloyd-Davies. They worked together with Tuja Kareng, Hun Lee, and Edward Wynn on the film and are here to say a few words on their behalf. Please join us to the stage, Saraya, Tom, and Fiona.
Hello, everybody. It's really, really great to be here with all of you tonight. I'm proud to have been nominated for this very prestigious award with such wonderful films, alongside such wonderful films. I'm proud to be nominated with my co-filmmaker, Rojita Adhikari, who couldn't be here tonight. We're thrilled that this story resonated with audiences because Nima, Sherkilamu, and Jangmo are wonderful, wonderful women who are so inspirational. And it was a very challenging story to do, not just physically. I'm not a big mountaineer, so I had to go up all the way to the Everest, on the route of the Everest. So it's challenging physically, but it's also a community that's very stoic. They don't really express themselves very much about just how difficult life can be up in the mountains, in such remote areas. So we're very grateful that these women trusted us with their stories and opened up to us about such personal tragedies that they have faced. They were an inspiration to us all. Thank you to the judges and to the Rory Peck Trust for this honor and for highlighting and celebrating the important work that freelancers in the documentary and news world do every single day. Thank you to Babel Doc and 101 East, in particular Clément Gargoulot, Sharon Rubel, and Nick Ole, who made this film possible. And to cameraman Gurmeet, Ram, and editor Julien, who brought this film to life. On a personal note, I'd also like to thank my husband, who's back home looking after our two daughters, one of who is 3 weeks old. He is my rock, and without him, I would not be here tonight. So this is also for my daughters, Mira and Shivani, for whom I like to make films like this about women and highlight more stories about how women achieve so much every single day. I'd also like to thank my parents for encouraging me always, particularly my mother, who let me soar and was my biggest champion. She passed away due to COVID earlier this year. She saw the film being produced and would have been delighted that I'm here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Tuja, Kareng, and Kunli and Edward can't be here this evening, so as one of the producers of the film, I thought I would say a few words on their behalf. Tuja and Kunli are in the Kachin state in the northern part of Burma and weren't able to leave through China primarily because of COVID, and they weren't able to leave through Myanmar because of the coup and their resistance to the coup. Edward is actually now in Thailand, but wasn't able to leave because the FCDO didn't grant him a visa in time. So they would have loved to be here. Al Jazeera, who commissioned the film that they were nominated for, very generously offered to fly them over if they did get their visas, but they weren't able to do that. They would have loved to be here, partly because it's so inspiring to see the work of other people around the world, and the three of them have all spent much of their adult lives fighting against the military junta in Myanmar, but actually this, for all three of them, was the first television documentary that they had ever been involved in. And it's been a great experience for them to have made the film, but also to have watched the other submissions by the other filmmakers. And I think that one of the great things about the award and the Rory Peck Trust is that it's given them an enormous amount of inspiration and confidence to carry on with their work. So I know they would have been absolutely delighted to be here. And on their behalf, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone.
Just to add to Tom, Edward said to him it was easier to get to the front line than it was to get into the UK at the moment. So we'd all like to thank the Rory Peck Trust for the recognition of their work. I'd like to thank Tom, who's been really dedicated to telling the story of both Kachin and Karen state and the situation there for 2 decades, I think. And we've worked together 10 years ago. When I got the email from Tom about this story, I actually thought it was so similar to the one I'd received 10 years ago when we did something for Channel 4 News that I thought it was actually a sort of it'd been stored and suddenly come back. And I'd also like to thank Dermot Jeffries at Al Jazeera People in Power for continuing to give us the opportunity to tell these stories and be able to work with teams like the one we have for this story and give a voice to stories that aren't often heard. So thank you all very much.
Well, thank you, Lord Black, and huge congratulations to our finalists. We now come to a part of the evening when we would like to take a reflective pause, honouring and remembering those journalists that have been killed in the pursuit of journalism. We know that many of you present tonight will have lost friends and colleagues to this increasingly dangerous profession. The Committee to Protect Journalists Global Impunity Index tells us that in the last decade, 226 journalists have been killed with impunity. So please join me in a minute's silence to recognise the journalists who've been killed undertaking their work since the beginning of this year.
Now, for the Martin... It's always really sobering to see those names every year. Now, for the Martin Adler Prize, a special category judged by the current trustees of the Rory Peck Trust. Now, I'm sure you'll all agree with me that every story from a foreign location in an international news outlet bears the fingerprints of an outstanding local journalist whose amazing knowledge and contacts opens up avenues that wouldn't be possible without them. Well, this year, for the second year running, the award is generously supported by the Embassy of Sweden. The award's namesake, Martin Adler, was a renowned cameraman and producer who covered dozens of war zones and stories on human rights abuses. Martin was a key supporter of the work of the Trust, and among his many awards was our News Award, which he received in 2004. The Martin Adler Prize was inaugurated after his death in 2006 to honor a local freelancer or field producer who has made a significant contribution to news gathering. In a few moments, we will reveal the winner of the prize, but before we do that, let's find out more about the three finalists. So Rihanna Raymond Drandrinosa from Madagascar, Parth Nikhil from India, and Shbeda Al-Naqqar from Iraq. First up, we have Shbeda Al-Naqqar. After gaining a degree in politics and international relations, she started her career in filmmaking as an assistant producer on a local documentary series covering social progress in the Kurdish community. She then became a freelance film producer for international media outlets, including Vice and BBC World, and her breadth and strength of work is outstanding, covering topics from mental health, Kurdish dogfighters, Lebanon's economic crisis, and Yazidi women clearing landmines, to name a few. All the time using her immense storytelling skills on important subjects rarely told in the area and in the wider world. So let's hear what the judges said.
Sort of stories that Shbeda was covering are incredibly sensitive as well, whether they're to do with mental health, to do with women escaping ISIS as well. Very hard-hitting stories that had a lot of impact. I mean, for Shbeda to actually be getting stories out, to be able to talk to people in such a hostile environment where she's facing so many different obstacles is an achievement sort of in itself.
Well, Shbeda was working in an extremely difficult country to work in, specifically for a woman. And she came across very strongly with her television pieces, the way she looked at all these issues that were happening specifically in North Iraq.
Iraq is a tough place to work, especially for female journalists. But Shbeda shot a compassionate documentary on mental health issues that are rarely discussed in the Middle East. I think her significant contribution to journalism is that she is trying to further the reporting of female journalists in Iraq and the Middle East.
Shbeda's story on Amsha, the Yazidi woman who was kidnapped by ISIS, managed to escape, a remarkable story, and now is working as a deminer to clear her village and her country of mines. One of the most remarkable stories that I've seen, and one that was incredibly compelling and personalized a much wider story. I thought that was a terrific piece of journalism, and obviously it wouldn't have been possible without having a strong bond with Amsha.
The next finalist is Parth Nikhil, an independent journalist based in Mumbai. Over the past 7 years, he has written for multiple publications, including the Washington Post, Al Jazeera, and the Los Angeles Times. He concentrates on socio-political stories, especially in rural India, and was awarded a fellowship in 2017-18 when he documented the agrarian crisis in the Marathwada region. He has written about farmers and migrant workers and won the European Commission's Lorenzo Natali Media Prize for his stories on migrant sugarcane cutters. Over the past year, he focused on the harrowing COVID death toll on journalists in India. He took us away from the big cities and brought to light rural stories of the pandemic, a truly harrowing picture. His style of writing has been likened to Hemingway and Steinbeck in its power and beauty. So let's hear what the judges thought.
Beyond his writing, Parth's significant contribution to news gathering was to tell the largely untold story of the harrowing death toll of journalists in rural India. It must have been a particularly difficult assignment for him to do, which he did with great dedication during the height of the pandemic.
With Parth's nomination, it was a fascinating read. He has a brilliant style of writing, and it was also a story that I don't think you hear much about. We all did hear about the movement from the cities to the rural areas, but nobody really talked about what happened when they were there. And so it was a classic story of uncovering a brilliant tale, powerfully told, and very much told in a style that was very sparse, but incredibly engaging, that just made you want to read more.
For Parth's writing is supreme, and you just start reading one of his pieces and you're mesmerized by what he says. As his sponsor for this particular award said, he was very much the voice for the voiceless. He was talking about Indians suffering from COVID, many of them migrants who are going from one area of India to another, and they suffered enormously. And other ones, they spent all their last rupees on getting their relative to hospital, and they're going to be on the poverty line for years to come. And he was writing very much from the heart, but very much looking at how it was affecting ordinary families in very rural areas of India.
An important point that Parth made was in talking to people on the ground. He wasn't talking to government officials and health leaders. He was talking to ordinary people. So this was a story that was very much from the bottom up. And we heard their real, true stories, unembellished. And I thought that was very, very powerful. For me, Parth's style was particularly impressive. It was simple, it was stark, it was direct. It really reminded me, actually, of Hemingway or Steinbeck in the way that he talked about issues and he talked about people's lives. There is a tendency covering COVID to go over the top. This is a 1 in a 100-year event, and you can use hyperbole. He didn't. He kept it simple, matter of fact, and that really resonated.
Our third finalist in this category is Rihanna Raymond Randrianosa, an independent journalist based in Madagascar with 21 years experience in investigative and cross-border journalism. She's a founding member of the Madagascar Network of Investigative Journalists, and her work has been published widely in international newspapers, including The Economist, The Ecologist, and Mongabe. The judges remarked how she gives a fascinating look at the underbelly of Madagascar, a place many people see as the most beautiful tropical isle. She lays bare the dark side of the country at considerable risk to herself. Let's hear more about her.
Rihanna has been working as a journalist for several decades, and her work that we've now discovered has been remarkably brave over a number of decades. She isn't a one-story wonder. She mentors other journalists. She stands up for the best principles of journalism. She does this as a freelance. She does this for different outlets. And she sets a great example to people in her own country and to us internationally. We're delighted to have learned about her work.
Her entry looked at the underbelly of a beautiful tropical island that I don't think many people would think about. And this conjunction of organized crime, and the complicity of the security forces, particularly the police. That is as old as the hills in lots of different circumstances, but applied to a place like Madagascar, I thought it was really compelling. And she took a lot of risks getting to the heart of this story as well. A really impressive entry.
Rihanna's story on cattle rustling, cannabis, and radiated tortoises was excellent. It told a story that has rarely been told. But beyond that one story, her significant contribution to news gathering has been the establishment of the Madagascar Investigative Journalism Network that speaks truth to power on the island.
Rihanna captured my interest right from the start, the way she presented the story. It had tortoises, which don't often turn up in mainline stories. It had cannabis and crime gangs all intertwined into a complex story that she manages to put together very, very cleverly. One thing she did right at the beginning of one story was interviewing one of the crime gangs, and then another person who'd she interviewed from prison as well. And that was at the beginning of one of her stories. So she looked at all what she was writing from all sides, and that came out very clearly and very strongly in my view.
I think for me the article was just fascinating. It was interesting, it brought different elements together. It was a story that I'd never heard before, and it had so many different pieces that constantly surprised you and told in a brilliant way from a place that you don't really hear much about, and really brought the underbelly out and exposed it. I think Rihanna also reflects the legacy that I think Martin Adler would want from this awards, working as a freelancer with international news organizations, and also for her own community and the things she's doing with investigative journalism in Madagascar. So she's very much a worthy nominee.
Now, to tell us who's won, please give a very warm welcome to Her Excellency Miss Michaela Kumlin Granit, Sweden's ambassador to the UK.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's really a great honor for me to be here tonight to present this year's winner of the Martin Adler Prize, which the Swedish Embassy proudly supports. And partnering with the Rory Peck Trust in their work is of great importance for us and the Swedish government. This is in line with Swedish foreign policy's initiative, the Drive for Democracy, where the aim is clearly to state that Sweden stands for democratic principles in all contexts, work to help strengthening democracy, and voice criticism against democratic deficits or risks of backsliding. And press and media freedom is essential in a democratic society and something that must never be taken for granted. Like we heard here initially, the Martin Adler Prize is an annual award honoring a local freelancer or field producer who has made a significant contribution to news gathering. And Martin Adler, as many as you know by now, was a renowned Swedish freelance journalist who studied here in the UK before he left to become a news correspondent reporting on conflict zones all over the world. And he also received the Rory Peck News Award for his film On Patrol with Charlie Company, which exposed excessive and disproportionate use of force by an American combat unit in Iraq in 2003. In 2006, Martin Adler was tragically shot dead whilst covering what was supposed to be a peaceful demonstration in Mogadishu. And his legacy as a freelance journalist lives on to this very day and keeps inspiring journalists all over the world. It is therefore with great honor that I wish to congratulate the nominees for being nominated to this year's Martin Adler Prize. But most of all, I would like to thank you. Thank you for your courage and for the immensely important work that you all do. Democracy and the freedom of press is worth protecting every day. The freedom to participate, speak, think, communicate, and love can never be taken for granted. Democracy provides us with home and the possibility to shape a common future. And now over to the prize. And then the 2021 award, Martin Adler Prize, goes to Rihanna Raymond Randranarissoa. Now, sadly, Rihanna couldn't be with us tonight, but she sent us this message from Madagascar.
To be a freelancer is not easy in the country like Madagascar, because we have not enough contract or a kind of collaboration with organization. So we have to face two financial support difficulties. So I think this project of Rory Peck Trust is really necessary for us. And I want to thank also to the organization, the Global Initiative, who suggest my works, my name to this award. So I encourage this kind of networking, this kind of co-working between journalists and international organizations.
Well, congratulations again to Rihanna. Shpeda is unable to join us tonight from Iraq, but her colleague, freelance documentary maker George Henton, who nominated her for the prize, is here tonight to say a few words on her behalf. So we'd like to invite George, as well as our other finalist, Part Nikhil, who has travelled here from India, to be with us. If they come up on stage now.
Okay. Hello, thank you very much. Unfortunately, yes, Beda was unable to be here. Unfortunately, like other people, her visa was granted, but too late. But I know she's watching online, and she's incredibly thankful for this, for being nominated alongside such incredible fellow journalists. She's asked me to read the following. This is before I knew that she could have recorded herself on the video, which would have been much better than me doing it. But here we go anyway. And Speda, I've shortened this a little bit, so apologies. When I first pursued this career, I knew it would be full of challenges. Fighting for freedom of speech, risking your safety to tell stories, and of course the everyday difficulties of making films. But for me and others like me, that wasn't all. I knew I would have a bigger challenge, that of being a woman working and living in conservative Kurdish communities, where standing against traditions can have serious consequences, consequences that I know only so well. Every Kurdish woman has her own battle to fight behind the walls before even stepping out of her own home. Today, at the age of 26, I am proud to be the woman that I am and doing the work that I do, the result of years and years of small steps forward and, at times, backwards. I hope this suggests how special being nominated for this award, said alongside these incredible fellow journalists, means to me. And lastly, I want to give a special thanks to George Henton. That's me, thanks very much, it's better. Vice News, BBC World as well, and the Rory Peck Trust, of course. And I wish all my fellow nominees in this category and other categories the best of luck, and indeed, congratulations. Thank you very much.
Hi. Thank you to the juries. It's an incredible honor to be shortlisted for the... Am I audible? Yeah. Thank you to the juries. It's an incredible honor to be shortlisted for the Martin Adler Prize, and a privilege to be shortlisted with Speda and Rihanna. While I stand in front of you, the mainstream Indian media back home is busy being subservient to the Indian government. At a time like this, I couldn't be more grateful to the People's Archive of Rural India for giving me the platform to do the stories that matter, stories from the remotest parts of India that document the everyday lives of everyday people. The second wave of COVID-19 devastated rural India, and through these stories, I tried to look at an impoverished region and see how an impoverished region deals with a deadly pandemic. It wasn't easy being in the field during these times, constantly thinking of getting more stories and also making sure you don't catch COVID. So I dedicate this award to People's Archive of Rural India and our founder, editor P. Sainath, without whom it would be impossible for a reporter like me to survive, let alone thrive. Thank you once again to the juries. It's, in fact, quite reassuring to know that good old-fashioned journalism still counts. Thank you so much.
Martin Adler nominees. And thank you so much to Ambassador Michaela Kumlin-Granit and to the Swedish Embassy for generously supporting that award. Now, we've come to our last award of the evening, the Sony Impact Award for Current Affairs. First up is British journalist Joshua Baker with his entry Return from ISIS, A Family Story. The judges felt that this piece had huge relevance to society as we try to understand why someone from a Western country would want to join ISIS and the sociology behind it. They thought it was a brilliant piece of work that grabbed you on several levels, and the journalism was remarkable. So let's have a look.
It was Musa and his brother that were forcing the kids to do this.
Soon after the video was released by ISIS, Musa was dead.
Apparently, him and a couple of guys felt brave, and they started to try to advance, and a drone caught him, bombed him.
So he was killed in a drone strike?
Yeah, I think so.
Return from ISIS had everything. It was not only kind of persistent journalism bordering on the obsessive, it also had elements of a kind of did she, didn't she, who done it quality, which put this in a different kind of category. The characters, good and bad, were extremely strong. There was a twist in the tale. You couldn't stop watching this thing.
You know, one of the things I thought was the most brilliant about it was the way the filmmaker was able to be both compassionate but also to really probe and to have a kind of dispassionate approach to trying to find out what the truth was without being, you know, he just had this incredible manner, and you wanted to go with him for the full film. You wanted to follow his story, and you became absorbed by his own commitment to the story.
Well, really insightful material. Our second finalist in this final category is from Kenya, and it's the work of Njeri Mwangi and Judith Kanaitha, and their film entitled The Baby Stealers. This was described by the judges as a brave, impactful, relevant film with an incredibly important story to tell. It was an extraordinary feat of complex, undercover investigative journalism. The judges also wanted to commend the great investigative work being done by the Africa Eye team and say that the unit has changed the game globally with fantastic work in Africa. Commendations to the BBC for continuing to do this. So let's have a look at a clip of this entry.
For over a year, Africa Eye has been investigating the underground trade in Kenyan children, going undercover to expose the networks that snatch babies from homeless mothers.
I've met 3 ladies today who lost their children, got snatched in the streets in their sleep.
In 2019, KTN journalist Hussein Mohammed launched an undercover investigation into conditions at Mama Lucy, a busy Nairobi hospital that has been plagued by allegations of malpractice.
Even filmed a nurse based in the maternity section telling us that there have been issues and there have been incidents of where children have been sold, where a couple has come and they want a child and the child has been sold. And the nurse on record tells us that, if you want a baby, this is how much you need to part with.
So you can verify that this is real. We have a reason to believe that you're involved in child trafficking. What do you have to say about that?
Me.
Huh?
Me?
Yes, you.
No.
You sold to one of our informants a child for 300,000. What do you have to say about that? Lakini, shika ibarua basi usome, you can reply to me or you can call me. Thank you.
The subject of this film matter is so shocking. You know, I mean, imagine trading babies and selling babies. I mean, it's almost beyond comprehension. But at the same time, it was an incredibly good investigation. High risk, obviously, and I commend the work they did on the ground with local sources and local reporters. Very, very difficult to do and very high risk.
What I liked about Baby Stealers was that it was not only a comprehensive film, but that it was so editorially mature. It put this nasty story of the underground Nairobi baby stealing market into a broader social context of poverty, social deprivation, corruption, and even social stigma. It gave us a complete picture, an ugly one, but a complete picture.
Extraordinary piece of journalism. Our third and final finalist is Evan Williams, who worked closely with an undercover team in Eritrea on the film Undercover in Africa's Secret State. The judges thought that this was a brave and compelling undercover documentary. The risks taken by the reporters and the extraordinary courage they showed is humbling, showing huge commitment over many years. It captured amazing personal stories and explains why so many Eritreans seek asylum in Europe. The bravery of these journalists in bringing these stories to the world is what the Rory Peck Awards is about. Let's have a look at the film.
It was rough. The interrogations was the first time I saw a dead body. I was trying to hang in there. Just take it a day at a time. Because if you stop to think, it's too much to bear.
This film reveals the truth about one of the most secretive and repressive countries in the world, often referred to as Africa's North Korea. After 9 months in prison, Hannah said she was sent here to Sawa military training base, where all Eritreans start their mandatory national service.
Everything is very sadistic. It's meant to put people down. It's meant to hurt people, not just physically, but psychologically as well. Now, thinking about it calmly, I would say that the same guards that made our lives miserable were miserable themselves. I think the Eritrean people are the perpetrators and the victims themselves. It's the system itself. It's the system.
If we were giving this award for degree of difficulty, the Eritrean film Secret State would have been the hands-down victor. This is what this award was about, putting cameras in the hands of the people who were actually living in and victims of this repressive, dangerous, violent police state, and coming up with this kind of product. You couldn't praise this any higher.
This film is hugely important in terms of its subject matter, massive human rights abuses. But also at the same time, it was beautiful to watch. It was beautifully filmed, and the story was very, very strong. They told the story really well. It had depth and really good context. So although it was about something really horrific, you could watch it and understand it and engage with it.
So there we have our 3 Sony Impact Award finalists. And to announce the winner, please welcome Kanta Yamamoto, Head of Marketing Services and B2B Global Digital Marketing Operations at Sony.
Thank you, Neville and James, and hello, everybody. My name is Kanta Yamamoto. I am head of B2B marketing services for Sony Professional Solutions Europe. This is my first awards ceremony, although Sony have been supporting the trust over the 20 years. And I am very pleased to be here because before my current role, I used to look after marketing for camcorders from DV Cam, XD Cam, something like FX9, FX7, and also Venice. So so I have been following the work of freelancers for many years. And while I have heard and seen much of the trust work over the years, there's something quite unique to be here with all of you tonight. The work of freelancers and what you do is even more poignant. The work and skill and bravery that the cameraman display is blending. And this is precisely what the Rory Peck Awards celebrate. And outstanding work of the most talented freelancers. Now I'm going to announce the Sony Impact Award for Current Affairs winner. I have seen all finalists, and I know it was a truly difficult choice to make. So I'm now pleased to announce the winner of Sony Impact Award. The Sony 2021 Sony Impact Award for Current Affairs goes to Joshua Baker.
Thank you. Evan, I owe you a pint. I'll get that later. As you can imagine, with a project that lasts 4 years, there's an awful lot of people to say thank you to. I truly am grateful to everyone who worked on this. You know, stories are made by teams, not individuals. But I think more than anything, I'd like to actually thank the Rory Peck Trust. Since I was a baby freelancer, they have supported me with safety training. And actually, the genesis of this film starts with me surviving a suicide bombing in Iraq, where I was quite badly injured. And it was the trust and many of the freelance community who are in this room who actually stepped in to support me. So it's wonderful to be here tonight, having started there to receive this. It feels like it's gone full circle. So thank you very much to the trust.
It really is a brilliant and powerful film, although I am biased. So, unfortunately, Judith and Njeri couldn't make it here from Kenya, but the freelance director of their film, Peter Murimi, is here to speak on their behalf. So please welcome Peter and Evan Williams on behalf of the undercover Eritrean team to the stage.
Thanks very much, everybody. It's so great. This is such great recognition. First of all, congratulations to Josh for such amazing work, and to the fellow finalists as well. I mean, really incredible work. Thank you very much to the Rory Peck Trust judges. I mean, just being in the finalists for the Eritrean team is such great recognition. It's hard to explain to you what this has really meant to them, because they've operated in the shadows for so long, under such repression, under such fear, just to try and get the story of their country out, that they were so gratified that we could at least get it on air. And then to have this recognition was so important to them. It's really empowered them just to be even now. You know, it's been very important for them. It's been very important for the country. A few word of thanks as well to Channel 4, Siobhan Sinnodon, who originally commissioned this, Louisa Compton, who kept it going. Even though we kept going for many, many years, as things didn't look like we were going to get the footage we needed, we finally got there. But really, this is just a big thank you to all of you here and the Rory Peck Trust for the recognition for the Eritreans, trying to explain to us why it is so many of their people are trying to get to Europe. That's what this is really all about. And you know, if we really want to try and stem the flow of refugees coming across the Mediterranean, it's up to our governments and our authorities to try and put pressure on the source of the problem, which is the repressive Eritrean government. So anyway, thank you very much on their behalf. I'm only their representative. Thank you.
Judy and Jerry, I thought they couldn't be here, but they passed their regards and are saying they're really honored to be finalists, and congratulations to the winner. It was such a pleasure to work with Judy and Jerry, they have like nerves of steel, and they really pushed the envelope in trying to get this story, because it was really challenging and difficult. And I think you needed a kind of a commitment that both of them have, but also very passionate about the subject matter, because they're both mothers in Nairobi. So as I say, we're really happy for Judy and Jerry, and I was pleasure working with them and so honored. So thank you so much.
Well done to all the nominees and finalists. Thank you, and thank you very much to Kanta Yamamoto and Sony for sponsoring the award. Well, that's the end of the awards part of the evening. So many congratulations again to all our winners and our finalists. And thank you so much to our judges and to our sponsors, AP, Google News Initiative, Sony, the Embassy of Sweden, because without them, none of this would have been possible. It's now my pleasure to hand over to the director of the Rory Peck Trust, Clotilde Retvan, to say a few closing words.
Thank you so much, Nawal and James, for giving us your time. Do such a great job presenting our awards tonight. I won't keep you long. I know you're probably itching to get back to the bar to celebrate this evening's amazing finalists. I just want to let you know a little bit about the Trust support programs, give thanks to our funders, and show you a preview of our Christmas appeal. Most of you probably know that the Trust runs an assistance fund which provides financial support to freelance journalists in crisis, including those who've been seriously injured, threatened, detained, or forced into exile as a result of their journalism. This year, we added a legal fund to help journalists fight slaps, an increasingly common form of legal harassment used to intimidate and ultimately silence journalists. And in September, we launched a resilience program in partnership with Facebook. This new program will provide essential mental health support, initially through trauma awareness workshops and grants to cover the costs of therapy for those that need it. This year, we have all been particularly concerned for journalists in Afghanistan. And to help this community who have suffered so much, we've launched a dedicated trauma fund for Afghan journalists to support them as they rebuild their lives and careers in exile. Now I must share my thanks and gratitude to our current funders who make all our work possible. As well as our award sponsors, we rely on corporate donations from many in the news industry. The BBC, Channel 4, and ITV News are our core industry supporters. We also get support from Agence France Presse, AP, Al Jazeera, CBS, CNN, the European Broadcasting Union, ITN, NBC, Reuters, ZDF, and the Telegraph Media Group. We're deeply grateful to the Open Society Foundation for core support and to the printing charity for their annual grant to our assistance fund. In addition, we receive grants from the Colonel W.H. Whitbread Trust, the Evan Cornish Foundation, the Fairness Foundation, and the Suter Trust. Thank you all so much for believing in our work and supporting it. We've seen tonight the huge contribution that freelance journalists make to the international news industry. They work without the support that staff journalists receive from the media outlets that employ them. They don't have access to the expert risk assessment, digital security advice, legal expertise, or psychological support one receives from a well-run bureau. My hope is that the Rory Peck Trust can fill this gap. Our safety clinics bring together security experts with journalists needing safety advice. These are usually pop-up clinics run at industry events, but we're really keen to be able to support this year-round as and when journalists need it. As you can see, our ambitions are great. There's so much more to do, and therefore so much more support needed. We'll be running a campaign to raise funds on the 10th of December, the date the Nobel Peace Prize will be awarded to journalists Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov. And I wanted to show you a preview of that campaign. You are our best ambassadors, and I hope that you'll support our campaign either by donating on the 10th of December or by sharing it with your networks on social media to help us reach new friends and supporters. Every year, individual fundraisers are inspired to challenge themselves, usually with various sporting endeavours, to raise funds for the Trust. Indeed, the CBS News team have repeatedly fundraised for us in memory of their fallen colleagues James Brolin and Paul Douglas, lost while reporting from Baghdad in 2006. This year, I must thank Venora Bennett, Victoria Clark, Kate Dupury, Amy Ferris-Rotman, Albina Kovalyova, Caro Creel, Aliom Leroy, Hayley Ott, and Emma Wells for fundraising on our behalf. Every single penny you've raised on our behalf will go to a journalist in need. Thank you. And last but not least, I want to tip my hat to Vaughan Smith, an old friend and reporting partner of Rory's and founder of the Frontline Club. Every year, Vaughan hosts this ceremony's unofficial after party. If your spirits and energy are still high when we get kicked out of the BFI in about an hour or so, join us at the Frontline Club in Paddington. If you don't already know it, you should. It's the home of foreign correspondents and freelance journalists in London. I'll see you there.